Here we have it. The bird battle that made Elon change the Twitter logo. Phoenix vs. Raven was obviously not a matchup I was super thrilled about. Not only was it just another Marvel vs. DC matchup, but it was one that had way too much potential. Like Strange vs. Fate, Batman vs. Iron Man, and Scarlet Witch vs. Zatanna, for example. All episodes that were good at the very least, but obviously had way too many possibilities to the point where disappointment was nothing short of an inevitability. Now, of course, this didn't taint the matchup for me or anything. It was just, there was a pattern going on with these kind of episodes, and it just made me feel like this episode was just going to be more of the same. However, I guess I'm just going to spoil it now. I ended up being very surprised by this episode. Like, very surprised. Though granted, I guess I should have expected that since Origin, Ben, and so many others were saying that the episode turned out really well. Whatever. Anyways, before I start the review, make sure you check out Capseris' video. Like always, it'll be in the description. And check out our reaction to the episode as well while you're at it. I was really busy that day, and I got home pretty late, so we had to cut the reaction pretty close, but I'm really glad we were able to do it, so go check it out. Now, let us commence. Phoenix's analysis is one that I really liked. To be fair though, most of the reason for that is because of the cutaway and the funniest joke we've had in Season 10 so far. Not kidding on that second part, by the way. Her rundown and Raven's 2 has one of the same problems as Rocket's one, however, given how comic panels just fly on screen, no cutout parts or zoomed in speech bubbles or fancy editing, just plain old comic panels that are hard to read given how small they are plus how quick they go by. And this sometimes makes the analyses feel kind of boring, and I don't want that to sound like I have the attention span of a goldfish and that reading anything longer than a syllable causes my brain to explode, but the lack of things happening on screen does cause me to sort of lose focus at points, because there isn't really much keeping my attention, if you get what I mean. But like I said, it's still a good analysis, and that also goes for Ravens as well. I just don't really have anything specific to talk about for that one. The cutaway is pretty funny with Mecha Goose Howard being voiced by Liam and Sam because of course they were. Liam especially has a vocal range way too wide for his own good. I think at this point he should just be considered both a writer and voice actor for Death Battle. And there's the reference to Raven vs. Twilight that I thought was pretty cute, even though that episode is mid as hell. And all the references to Edgar Allan Poe was also pretty cool. All in all though, Raven's analysis isn't too special, but it's better than the one she got in that aforementioned episode, so that's something. I don't want it to sound like I'm disappointed or let down by these analyses, because I'm not. Honestly, they're kind of exactly what I expected, but I still enjoy them quite a bit. Now, if the analyses were just okay to me, why did I say this episode surprised me so much? Well, to no one's surprise, it's the animation that did it for me. Starting with negatives because despite how good the fight is, it still has a good amount of flaws. The models look really great, but they can look off at points. Specifically when Phoenix looks straight ahead, she looks kind of weird, but everywhere else she looks fine, and plus she only does it like twice, so it's not that huge of a deal. And while Raven looks really, really good, her cloak looks more blue than purple, which does make it look kind of awkward at points as well. Though blue is my favorite color, so I guess I shouldn't really be complaining about that, should I? My second little criticism is how the fight feels kind of confusing at points. At least on the first couple of watches, that is. Like when Phoenix teleports Raven to space or another dimension, I'm not sure. As well as when they come back to Azarath, when Phoenix avoids the moon and comes back out of nowhere, when time stops without warning. Some of the stuff I just really didn't get, at least on my first watch of the episode. I don't know if it's the same for other people though, it might just be a me thing. Even then, I don't really care, because this whole animation was just a visual eye candy and pure awesomeness to the point where my problems don't even matter. They're just little nitpicks. So, let's get to talking about the good stuff. Just gonna go ahead and get the music and voice actors out of the way, starting with the music. Forevermore is a really cool sounding track. Theirwolf has really been killing it this year. This is their 4th track they've made this year, and just like all the rest, this one sounds really amazing. I love how they combined both the X-Men cartoon and Teen Titans theme into the track, while also making it sound natural. The track is also really atmospheric. The somber points add weight to stuff like transformations and the illusions and stuff like that, and the intense parts add a lot more impact to the more action-driven scenes. Also, weirdly, the calm music we hear at the very start and end of the track feels sorta nostalgic for me. I don't know why, it just kind of reminds me of themes I would hear in video games like Skylanders or something. I don't know. Again, it might just be a me thing. A really good OST for this episode. Now, the voice actors did really, really well in their roles. Corey Petit as Phoenix was a really perfect fit, which actually is kind of lucky given that Corey is a massive fan of the character and has wanted to voice her in some way for a long time. So, I guess that worked out, didn't it? And even disregarding that, I'm confident that she would have been picked for the role anyways, given the performance she gave in the episode. Which, apparently she did while she has stitches in her mouth, so... Wow, okay. She's pretty good when talking normal and stuff like that, but she really shines when she turns into Dark Phoenix. Like, the maniacal laughter during her transition, and pretty much every other line or grunt she gives while she's in the form. That one line when she first turns into White Phoenix, not gonna bother with the rest of her name, feels kind of awkward, but I feel like that's from a more writing standpoint rather than a voice acting one, so I'll just let it slide. All in all, I really loved her portrayal, and that isn't to undermine Kira Buckland reprising her role as Raven. She also does a really impressive job as the character. I can't think of any lines that I thought were delivered awkwardly or badly from her. All around, she does a really great job. I especially love her Afraid of the Dark line, her laugh when she turns into Dark Raven, and her final line is the spirit ghost form thingy whatever. I really loved both performances. I thought they did a great job. We start with a pretty simple setup in Azarath, which looks absolutely gorgeous by the way, as we have a small little bird battle between Raven's soul self and the Phoenix Force flying around the city. Just like Raven vs. Twilight, the soul self's hand-drawn animation looks spectacular. And the same can be said for every other piece of hand-drawn animation in the fight, so I'll just go ahead and say that now so I don't have to keep repeating myself. Phoenix does her Meteor Smash, and Raven pulls a Batman and destroys part of the place she was trying to protect before trapping Jean in an illusion, causing her to smack her face into a door, which got a chuckle out of me, I'm not even gonna lie. The quick little animation of Jean looking around is really smooth for some reason, and as I said earlier, Raven's line here is awesome. After Jean breaks out, they do some ballroom dancing, I think. Whatever it is, before Raven turns into Dark Raven, does a Zawardo, and slices Jean in half and wins the fight. Except not really, because these are comic book characters, you know they're never really dead. I mean, come on, this is Jean Grey we're talking about here. Knowing her, she might have already died a 17th time by the time I get this video out. We have one of the best shots in the animation before a small scuffle in space, which isn't much to dissect honestly. It still looks really cool though. We have Raven charging at Phoenix with her soul self, ramming a moon into all of her clones, which is kinda small but whatever, and her doing her Mikasa from a certain scientific railgun impression, before they get teleported back to Azarath and Phoenix burns her to a crisp and wins the fight. Except again, not really, because this is comic book characters. Instead, she goes Danny Phantom mode and absorbs the darkness within her. That, however, turns her into racist Phoenix, who sends her to the White Hot Room. Then comes the final clash of Phoenix gathering the power of all the other X-Men and Raven using the power of her rings or Azarath, I'm not really sure. Phoenix's big giant flame does kind of disappear out of nowhere, but that's easily made up for by the kill. I already said that the death scream that Corey gave Jean was great, but I really love how the Phoenix comes out to try and protect her, but ultimately fails, getting blown out by the attack, only leaving a small flame which Raven blows out with a single breath. Which would be a very fantastic ending, if Capsiris hadn't pointed out that it's a reference to Sonic 06. He really just had to mention it, didn't he? Raven then, still as a spirit, returns home to Azarath as we get one final look at the amazing setting. You know, Death Battle should really just put their backgrounds in something and just let us explore them, because man, the amount of work they do for such a big area only for it to be seen once in a 3-minute animation is astonishing. Or, at the very least, could you give us more background tours like you did with Tanjiro vs. Jonathan? Pretty please? Well, getting back on track, yeah, Raven won. Another unexpected winner back-to-back. I'm not complaining, though. I mean, I was rooting for Raven, so obviously not. And again, like I said in my Vader vs. Obito review, I like it when post-analyses actually have to convince me of a result I was not expecting instead of just pointing out the obvious. Also, it is nice that Phoenix finally got knocked off her perch, like what happened with Ben 10 and Archie Sonic. Wait, I just realized all 3 of those died to DC characters. Huh. I really enjoyed this episode. The analyses are nothing to write home about, except for that one joke in Phoenix's analysis. Seriously, I can't get over how coincidental and funny that one is. But the fight truly was spectacular. It reminded me a lot of Trunks vs. Silver's animation, where while there wasn't too much specifically to talk about, it's just so cool that you can't help but love it. This episode definitely isn't my favorite of the season as a whole, but it does have my favorite fight animation, so take that for what you will. Next up, we have another King W. And it's a shame too, because I was actually excited for this one. Alright, jokes aside, I'm very stoked for Guts vs. Dimitri. Guts definitely needs another episode like how Vader did, and Fire Emblem was long overdue for a rep. It is kind of odd they didn't go for Lucina or even Byleth for their first dive into the series, but I don't really care, because while I wouldn't exactly call this one of my favorite matchups, it is one that I've had an interest in for a long while. I really hope it's 3D so that we can get some good sword on spear choreography, although I definitely wouldn't mind this being 2D because of Luis's commission, which proved it can definitely work, and also I'm not sure Guts has all the resources needed to be in a 3D animation, but I do think he does have a 3D model at the very least, so that's cool. Really, I just hope this fight animation is really hype with a lot of action and a lot of brutality. Give us some Omni-Man vs. Homelander type shenanigans. Maybe not as gory, because I don't really think these two are known for gore necessarily, but I still want whoever the winner is to be absolutely messed up by the time the KO screen appears. Speaking of that, I'm not really sure who wins, but since that Dimitri is more powerful than Guts, then I'm gonna have to give it to Guts, since come on, he fights things more powerful than him every day. Now, if Dimitri is weaker than him, then Guts might have something to worry about. Really hoping this one turns out well. Now, what score would I give Phoenix vs. Raven? I'm not exactly sure. The fight carries it hard, so I'll give it around an 8 out of 10 or something. I know that is the most boring score for, well, anything, but yeah. Honestly, I might stop giving number scores just because I don't really want my thoughts on episodes to be combined since they're all so different. But I don't know, we'll have to see. Follow me on twitter.com, you know, the site with the big blue bird as its logo. You know, the one with stuff like tweets and retweets and stuff like that. As well as subscribe because we're close to 500 and that's a cool number, so please. Again, make sure to check out Capsiris' review, and I'll be seeing y'all whenever I see y'all.
I'm about to get racist! Now I'm racist!